I mean, just try to imagine how you'd feel if you got thrown on the ground and a grown up was kind of leaning on top of you, and you're supposed to calm down, and that's every fiber of your being is going to fight back. And even kids who are less verbal or nonverbal, that has to be terrifying.
Hello, this is Rita, and this is me and my mommy's podcast, and then my mommy, and there's me, and I'm just talking about this stuff, and there's me tap dancing, because this is a tap dancing slash autism podcast, and there's a bunch of animals, and I'll be trying to in my hair, and there's a bunch of sand in the ocean. Also, there's all the soul talk stuff, I love all my mentors and their babes. Oh, that, and also, yes, like life stuff and tap dancing. Oh, and also there's my boots. My boots are amazing. Also, there's me, trying not to have a panic attack. Also, this is a podcast about me, autism, and tap dancing, and blah, blah, blah. I'm just ADHD in this thing. Also, there's my cute, adorable puppies.
Rob, thanks for coming back on the podcast. It means a lot to both of us. Do you mind introducing yourself to audience members who may not have any idea who you are because they weren't listening back in January?
Sure. My name is Rob Delena. I am from Sudbury, Massachusetts. I co-wrote a book with my son Ryan called Without Restraint, which chronicles Ryan's journey through the special needs school system and the mental health, medical system, and the many struggles we had along the way, and many bad parenting decisions I made along the way, and then how through happenstance we discovered skiing, and how that was really life-changing for him and for me. And we were on the podcast before together, and I'll tell you a secret later. It's Ryan's birthday today. Ryan is 24 years old today. He is currently in Red River Gorge, Kentucky, rock climbing. So we won't see or hear from him, but
that is a better place to be on your birthday than on a podcast.
You would definitely agree with that. He's having a ball. So he's living in a van, and he drove down to Kentucky a couple of days ago. He's going to be there for a few weeks, and then he starts work this summer as a rock climbing guide in Acadia, Maine, which is a national park where he's a rock guide. So he's getting strong. He said, getting ready for work. So that's where he is.
She's like, "What are we talking about?" She's like, "Are we just having fun and talking about rock climbing?"
Exactly. No, it's a big part of his life.
I wanted to bring you back on the program because I'm having a lot of parents reach out to me and ask, they're being pressured. And I figure you're my expert. I know who understands this. The school system's like, you have to put your young child on medication. You need to put your young child in ABA.
Yeah.
And they're like, I don't feel that's right. But the experts are telling me this is what I need to do. And they're feeling torn.
So this counts as first-degree slow burn murder, right?
That was our experience for sure. I mean, it's, I think for a lot of parents, whether their kids are on the spectrum or otherwise, I mean, particularly boys, I think the medication conversation comes pretty quick if they're not willing to sit still. And it's usually, some form of Ritalin, stimulant type medicine that is an effort to slow them down. I think, in the grand scheme of medicines, there's a lot. The stakes are lower for that. I hate to say that, but they're lower because they're fast acting and they leave your system pretty quickly. The side effect profile is pretty good. So that decision, again, I wouldn't make it lightly, and I would always encourage people to stay away from it for as long as they can. But if you get to that point where it was the only choice you had, I think there's less risk with that. And if you get great results, then that's something to think about. Where I always worried with Ryan, and Ryan didn't do well on the Ritalin type medicines, which sent us into a different category. And then the next category is usually the SSRIs, which are, antidepressant, anti-anxiety type meds. Those have a much different side effect profile. Even if the side effects just weight gain or blood pressure or, things like that have real stakes and consequences. If somebody's, overweight and their blood pressure's up and they're pre-diabetic, I mean, those are things that will shorten your life over the haul. And then you have to decide, is the benefit so great, that, and are we in a situation where, the child can't exist without it? And that's a hard one to answer because a lot of times these kids are so young, it's really hard to say, and you really don't know what the next year would bring or the next day would bring. And I think in Ryan's case, we got down that path where we started on the SSRIs, and then we ended up in this third category of the antipsychotics, which are like Seroquel and Risperdal and Lamictal, and those drugs are very powerful, have tons of side effects. And for kids on the spectrum, a lot of times Seroquel is the go-to, and a lot of these have generics now, so if you look it up, the names might be different, but Seroquel almost automatically comes with a 20-pound weight gain around your midsection. Like it's an instant. In fact, my dad has dementia and is in an elderly facility, and he would lash out when they would try to change him, and the first thing they put him on was Seroquel, and he instantly gained what looked like 40 pounds. And it's and I swore I would never let anyone do that after Ryan was on it, but again, here I was backed into this corner by the facility and these doctors saying, he can't be here without taking medicine. So I digress, but so there's a lot of consequence with medicines. The side effect profile, I think people sometimes, and we did this, focus on the big bad ones, the sort of instant tragedy that can come from taking something like this. But don't forget the sort of slow burn type, side effects, which have health, impact as well. So, it's a long answer to a short question about medicine. ABA, I would put in a different category just because, it's such a broad encompassing category where all of the special needs schools probably to some degree are ABA based, right? And I think, ABA would be like, there's certain ways to learn to read and it might have a name, but the parts of ABA where you're restraining and isolating kids if they don't do it are the parts I would focus on. If ABA means you get a candy by doing something good, I can live with that. If it's you get thrown in the isolation room for an hour and they lock the door, if you do something bad, that's the part I would worry about.
That's the one that a couple of our school districts around here are still doing, is the one we all dislike.
Yeah, no, I mean, we went through it. It was awful. And I watched kids in therapeutic schools who, that weren't as, they just didn't get to that point and they didn't get restrained or they didn't get isolated. And those schools, like the good parts were good. I mean, small classes, individual education plan, transitions, previewing, all that stuff that we learned, as a parent of a son who was struggling, were beneficial. But what we weren't really seeing was the impact of the restraints and the isolation. And it was only when he got older and he could really express, how bad it was. And when we were asked to do it at home and I would see the folly of it, like all of a sudden I'm rolling around on the floor with this kid and I don't even remember why. And how is this supposed to teach him to make better decisions the next time? All he's going to remember is that he got restrained. He's not going to remember the bad decision. So I think anytime you're in a therapeutic school and they're allowed to use restraint, if your child is being restrained, more than once a month, then I would start to worry. I mean, because that means they're using it prophylactically as a condition of getting something. The threat of restraint always hangs over their head. And I mean, just try to imagine how you'd feel if you got thrown on the ground and a grown up was kind of leaning on top of you and you're supposed to calm down, and that's every fiber of your being is going to fight back. And even kids especially who are less verbal or nonverbal, that has to be terrifying, so I don't have, the problem is I don't have a solution. Like if public school isn't an option and that's your option and that doesn't
These are
work.
the public schools doing it, Rob.
Really? Wow. I mean,
these are the public schools doing that type of ABA, throwing kids in isolation rooms, tying them down.
And what they'll always say is when you confront them on it, they'll always say, well, our other choice is to call the police, right? That's always the threat, and that used to scare us off. But I honestly, like, I've seen some scenarios where if the police are trained and they know how to de-escalate a situation, I've seen police come to a school and just kind of talk through it and say, you okay now, you calm down. Like, they're not going to always leave in handcuffs. I think schools make you think, if the police come, your 7-year-old is going to leave in the back of, and I mean, that could happen, I suppose. But I think that they use that as an excuse and they rely too heavily on even isolation to me. And we had one of Ryan's therapists discuss that. We thought we had won the battle with it. We asked this one particular school to stop restraining him, and they were using isolation a lot. But that was just as traumatic, because what they don't tell these kids sometimes is how long you're going to be in there. So imagine if you're held hostage and you don't know when you're getting out. I mean, if you had I'd rather have a 20-year prison sentence. At least you know it's 20 years and you're going to get out in 20 years. If somebody just locks you in a room and doesn't tell you when you're going to get out, that's very, I think, stressful for a kid or for anybody, for a grown up.
Definitely. I think a lot of the parents are also, and I figured, I pulled Lita out a lot quicker of some of these therapies because I had been in it, and as soon as I saw anything, it was like, not putting her through that garbage.
Yeah,
You
no,
have a thing you want to say there, or were you just leaning forward?
What?
But a lot of these parents are like,
What?
how can I trust myself? I don't know. I'm not the expert.
I
I'm
know.
just the parent who thinks
At
this
least
feels
you
wrong.
aren't trying to slow burn murder your child.
He has
You
opinions on
make a
some of
good
this.
point. No, you make a good point, Lita, because if you think about it, your mom knows you better than anybody, and your mom knows what works for you and what doesn't work. So those same lessons should apply in school. I mean, no, I don't care if somebody went to, has a PhD in how to treat, kids generally, they don't really know you, Lita, right? They don't know everything about you where your mom does. So I would always lean on your instinct, and if it doesn't feel right, it probably isn't right. I just think we know more than they do. The problem is you don't want to be wrong. It's almost like the stranger danger. Like we all grew up with that. I'm older than you, but we're in that era where you thought if you left your kid for 2 minutes, somebody was just going to come and take. Well, statistically speaking, the odds of that are like infinitesimal, but you never want to be the one. So you but I think that's what happens. These schools get you convinced that if you don't do this thing, all of this stuff will happen and it'll be your fault. And I think we reached a point with Ryan where I was willing to take that chance because I knew everything they were trying wasn't working, and it was and if it had to be me that was wrong, I'd rather have it be me. Then that's so trust your instincts.
That's one of the things I wanted to bring you on because you did take that leap of faith, going, no, Brian needs something else. This isn't working. And as dad, I know him better than you do. How hard was that for you to grapple with being the one going, yeah, I'm going to take control of what we're doing?
Really hard because I always thought I never worried that Ryan would hurt someone else. I thought there was a real chance that he might just get to a point where it wasn't worth living anymore. And I thought, God, imagine having to live with that. And if I played a part in that, that would be the end, right, for me too. And when you see, what's the definition of insanity? When it's just over and over, they kept saying that we were going to get a different result, and they were trying the same thing, and it just never was going to come. And I had this experience in the book. If you look at the book, it looks like we just went skiing one day, and I saw this different kid, and that was true to a certain degree. But the parts of skiing I was just spending a lot of time with them, and I had to travel with them, and we had to go through all of these things like waiting and line and airports and things that everybody said he could never do. And when I was seeing him have success and knowing that in that scenario, I couldn't restrain him, I couldn't isolate him. I mean, if I had to negotiate with him all the time, I had to be prepared, be creative, use humor, just something to diffuse him, something to just de-escalate. And I was able to then take that back and say, why can't they do that? It's just not that hard. He's not what they think he is. And I think they get just so stuck in how they're trained. And if you're trained in ABA, that's all you're going to use. And if you're a doctor who prescribes medication, when you walk in that office and you say, I have a toothache, or you're going to leave with medication. I mean, they just kind of are so conditioned to follow the steps. And a lot of this is them being afraid of being sued. It's liability, it's ruined their profession too. I almost feel for them in some ways because God forbid they don't prescribe the pill and your kid does something and then they're vulnerable. So there's a lot of this liability avoidance and CYA mentality, I think, in the system, in parenting in a lot of ways. And at some point there's risk in life and you have to really trust that it's going to be okay. One part of medication I'll come back to too is particularly with Ryan. I knew he wouldn't take it when he got to the point where he was in charge of his own life. And I knew he would, some people will have that and some people won't. I mean, I knew at some point he would have, some freedom and a lot of freedom maybe. And I knew he would never take medication. And so anything we were, supposedly gaining from it was going to be out the window anyway. So I'd rather have him learn to have some battles and have some heartache, and deal with some things. He makes that point in the book that the medication muted his ability to feel anger and sadness. That was why they gave it to him, so that he wouldn't unravel. But it muted his ability to feel happy, and he never really felt happy. So if you're not having those highs and lows and sort of experiencing that, you're just always stuck with these guardrails. And I think when he came off it, he was pretty emotional because he had never had to deal with a lot of this stuff. So I think you don't want to set somebody up for being 35 years old and having no ability to deal with a bad day. And I think that's what the medications were doing for him.
I'm only chuckling because the medication they had me on did let me feel the deep depression, because the antidepressants made me even more depressed.
Really interesting. That's just the way you were wired. And,
Oh.
and that happens a
Yeah.
lot like that. And people you probably, maybe we're afraid to say that because you're being told that it's supposed to do the opposite. And it must be me. There must be something really wrong with me.
I was told I did, because I was a later teen when I was taking them and going through it. And I was told I was just being attention seeking and that the meds would have fixed it by now.
Yeah, the magic pill is going to do everything. I know. It's incredible. It really is that we've gotten to this point where, I have a daughter who went to a fancy private school. I'm on the board of the private school. I would say 1/3 of the kids of this fancy private school are on maybe even half are on either some sort of ADHD med or some sort of anti-anxiety med. And these are the, quote unquote, best of the best. They had to test into the schools, best of the brightest. And they're all, so emotionally deficient, I think. And we, allowed that to happen. So it's at some point, I think the pendulum is starting to swing. I think we're starting to see some, really focus on, diet and exercise and just sort of living differently. And those lessons are good for kids. And listen, it's easy for me to say. I had a kid who was very active and athletic. If you have a kid that just refuses to do that kind of stuff, but it was Ryan that taught me a lot about, like, he was sort of a conspiracy theorist on foods and stuff like that way before anybody was. And he would tell me, there's, red dye, whatever is going to kill your dad. And I'd laugh and like, how could they allow that to be in the foods if it's so bad? Like, they would never do that. Well, sure enough, right? It's terrible for us. Everybody knows it now. So, yeah.
What are you wanting to say over there, kiddo? I can see it on the tip of your tongue.
No red M&Ms for you. What happened?
So, why you just making me think that school is really just for a place where you A, make future drug addicts, B, make future prisoners, and C, make it to kill themselves and make people really go through with it? School bullies are going to spiral and you're sometimes just a place to control a population of human beings at this point. For future drug addicts and prisoners. And probably all the worst in human being kind. Can murder your child.
So she may be a conspiracy theorist at 13.
I think I was going to say, I've heard that a lot on some of those podcasts I listen to about how school was meant to produce factory workers. And that is true. I mean, but I do think, and I have seen, there are some good parts. I mean, you'll make some great friendships and it's not all bad. I hope anyway.
Or you could just leave your house without having to use school as an excuse to leave your house and not be
You make a good point.
introverted that much.
You make a good point. You will learn a lot in life. You don't have to be in a classroom. I agree with that.
He's homeschooled for a reason. I don't think a school could handle her.
Yeah, homeschooling, I think, is probably a great thing. And I think for Ryan, it would have been harder because he just craved other people. It would have been isolating for him. But for some kids, I think if you're in a neighborhood where there's a lot of kids who are homeschooled and you have these groups and you have, you're the studio, you're around kids all the time. I think it really could work. I mean, I think you're not dealing with a lot of terrible stuff you would be dealing with if you were, in a therapeutic school or a bad public school.
It also helped us because she has severe dyslexia, and a lot of the teachers she had were like, well, if she would just concentrate harder, her dyslexia would go away.
Who says that? Are you serious?
She's even had that with dance teachers because
Right.
there's reading and dance classes, and they're like, "Well, if she would just quit being so lazy, her dyslexia will go away." And I'm like,
Yeah.
Oh,
And
yeah,
I've also been creeped out by them because Lily, you told me did not take well you saying that you need to be in my personal life because stranger danger, and I don't know you that well. You are still stranger. So please stop saying we have a connection. We don't have a connection. I don't know you outside of four walls. You are creepy. I'm not taking the candy.
there are some
Well,
of
that and
those.
being kidnapped in the van.
Well, I agree with that. Yeah, but I can hate pretty good. Yeah. Okay. Just you and me, kid. What game are you playing? Can you hear me? Lita, you look older than the last time I saw you. I have to say, you look more grown up. So what was that, about 6 months ago? I can't hear you.
and it decided to mute my microphone. Yeah, it's been about 6 months. She has grown
Yeah.
up just a bit.
Yeah, you look more like a teenager, I think. I mean,
You
I don't
actually,
know. Maybe it's the
she's like,
hairstyle.
I'm
Your hair
13.
different. Yeah, you look definitely. You'll be driving soon.
Oh yeah, I'm like, that's gonna be another fun one.
You know
Is
that,
when she
yeah,
starts driving.
that's the most terrifying moments of your life. Trust me. The first
Oh
time
yeah.
you're sitting next to them in the car. Oh
My
God.
dad wants me to steal his car. I won't steal his car. Pretty sure it's because it's very, very broken car.
Yeah, you
I'll
don't
steal
want
its
to feel
car.
good.
But
He's
it's
the
paid
one who
off.
bought it. He's the one who decided to get it. Not my
Yeah.
fault. Not my problem.
Oh.
Jack, are you gonna be on the camera or not?
I did.
Your butt is up.
The puppy is making his presence known down here
Oh,
again.
yeah, you're almost fun.
Um,
I like Sweet Puppy.
I did. A lot of the parents I'm talking to are very, very worried because they're being convinced by, and it's the school systems. It's not even like their doctor telling them you need ABA. It's not their
Mhm.
doctor telling them that their child needs meds, which I'm like, have you talked to a medical professional? Because maybe we could talk then. They're concerned that they feel like walking into some of these very old fashioned ABA things that they're evil, which I mean, I think there's a difference between the new fashion and old fashioned. ABA needs to differentiate what they're talking about.
Yeah, for sure.
But they don't know how to speak up and tell people I'm uncomfortable with my child being in this situation.
That's a great question. No, and I think a lot of times I'm not as familiar with Colorado than I was here, but the IEP meeting that happens every quarter, or it's this this exercise in nothingness. I would sit there in those meetings, and they would go through and Lita can use her pencil 6 out of 10 times, or like all these meaningless metrics, that just really doesn't add up to much. I think it's got to be more frequent contact and be a pain, be the difficult parent, be the parent they're afraid is going to walk in the building, because they will treat the child differently if they know that, one, you're involved, two, that you're litigious, three, that you're loud. I mean, they think they just react differently. And when Ryan got put into therapeutic schools, a lot of the kids in the school system there were in foster care and were in some difficult situations, and they just didn't have parental involvement. And I watched those schools take advantage of those kids because they knew there wasn't anyone on the end that would really call them on anything. They would treat it a lot worse. So I think, be involved, and set metrics that you're setting. They're going to set theirs in the IEP, which aren't really anything that matters. But if on a weekly basis, I don't see progress in math. I don't see progress in reading. I do see his behavior devolving, or why, what are we doing? What's his day look like? And I think that's, the kind of thing that they have to answer for a little more, and to ask some questions. I mean, I think what was eye-opening, COVID was awful in so many ways. The one thing that came out of it was when parents could see the Zoom school and they could see what was going on and hear what was going on. And I think it was eye opening. I think if we could have like cameras in classrooms and see what, what really goes on. And I think, trust your child's, sometimes Ryan was so young and he'd come home and have these wild, a lot of it was true. I mean, he said they locked me in a room or they tried to cover my mouth and things like that. And, um, I got in trouble for some silly thing. And I think I must be exaggerating. Like, there's no way he got held because he, whatever, he, tore up his paper or something. And most of the time it was true. So I think it's, frequent meetings and ask to see progress. And when they recommend, some sort of detrimental punishment or some kind of medicine, I mean, why? What's the end game? What's the benefit? What do you hope to achieve by doing this? And what's going to change? And that's where I think they just sometimes reflexively will go to the step 1, step 2, step 3, and usually that involves medicine without any real thought as to what the best case scenario is to come up with.
I know when Leta was in ABA for the whole 5 weeks, she was an old-fashioned ABA. Her very young ABA therapist, Leta did something the ABA therapist didn't like. I was like, she's 3, get over it. And the ABA therapist was like, well, she is not allowed to have electronics or a bedtime story or have a nighttime bath tonight. And I'm like,
you had to enforce it.
I'm like,
how nice of you.
Oh, she said you shouldn't allow your child to have hygiene and not give the chance of catching something that will probably kill the child.
other thing.
She said to murder your child. What? What?
My other
I don't
question
get
to
the
her
best
was,
part.
this is 1:00 p.m. By the time we're getting to bedtime, you're 6 p.m. No 3-year-old is going to correlate. The punishment is from 1 p.m.
Yeah, that happens a lot, and I think then it gives them, they always have this perception that he or she would be better at school if home wasn't so permissive or such a disaster, and I think they have no real appreciation for. A lot of times you have other kids, or you've got to get through the day as best you can, and I think I guess one thing maybe is, if you have an appreciation for what ABA is, imagine doing it at home and saying, would this work if it was just me and her? Would this work one-on-one? And could I be consistent in how I meted out these punishments and rewards? And I just don't know if it works. I mean, I think it works if you're training a puppy, maybe, but I think kids are different. I really do. I think kids, react better to positive praise than they do negative praise. I just believe that.
There's a lot of dog trainers that are saying positive reinforcement works better for the dogs than negative reinforcement.
Probably true, right? That's probably true, right? I think I know my dogs are spoiled as any dog, so we wouldn't have done any of that. It's just that's my impression of like whacking the dog with the newspaper would work. That was probably the 1970s way of looking.
Our dogs are definitely spoiled rotten, and I like to laugh at the pity Staffy mixes vet because she'll sit there and go, he needs to go on a diet as she's feeding him part of her sandwich. And I'm like, you are sending the puppy mix signals here.
Yeah, exactly, right? Just like you would do with a kid, right? It's the same thing. So
But
we're all inconsistent.
Both of them are rescues, and their vet just is like, but they had bad backstory, so I must love them. And I'm like, I understand.
Right?
But you can't
That's
say
why we
go on
gotta-
a diet, Pudgy, and hand him part of your meal.
Exactly, right? Definitely mixed signals. So I wish I could give more concrete advice. I just think it's, you kind of know it when you see it when it's wrong, and I don't know. It's one of those parts where I don't know if it ever feels right, because maybe you're not hearing much from your son or daughter, and the school reports are okay. I still would question if it's working. It's I wonder.
And I think that's what a lot of the parents need to hear is it is such unless it's like black and white, this is wrong.
Yeah,
You're
no, for sure.
always going to be probably wrestling with every decision you make as a parent, whether your child is neurotypical or neurodivergent.
And I think it's especially with it depends on their age. I mean, with medicine, before they go through puberty, their bodies are so different. And, Ryan was on so much medication that he didn't go through puberty until we took him off. He was, we were almost going to have to give him a medication to cause puberty, a human growth hormone, because and then the second he came off, it was like, became a teenager. And so that tells you what it physically was doing to him. And then Ryan was on Seroquel, lithium. At one time he was on Lamictal. He had a bad rash reaction to Lamictal, which was really bad. Oh God, there's other ones too. Prozac in that genre. Those I thought were less. They were usually a lower dose, and I don't even think they do anything, but they didn't have as much of a physical impact as Seroquel had a tremendous on his face.
They had me on Paxil, Adderall, and lithium, and they kept upping the dosages because it wasn't working. And they're like, let's just keep upping the dosages. And at one point in time, there was a comma in the dosage.
Oh God, that's incredible. I mean, ironically, lithium of those three is probably the safest. Lithium's been around forever. It's frequently it's hard to get it prescribed because they don't make any money on it. It's been generic for so long that it's just not one they'll always go to the newfangled one because there's more money to be made. And I think lithium, it's just hard to be on. You're thirsty all the time. I mean, it takes a toll on in that part, but it doesn't have, I think, the side effect profile of it isn't as bad, believe it or not.
The dog has decided he wants to make his opinions known. It's right over here.
I would love to.
She's going to take him out real quick because he's like, I decided now is when to go potty, not earlier when you asked me to.
Definitely.
At least he's chubby, is what she's saying.
That's good. That makes it a lot easier.
Boiled rotten.
I have two like that, and this is one of them. Like, it has to eat by 4:30, so I'll be hearing from that one soon enough. But we'll be right on time.
One of the other questions, because like I was on way too much medication, like to the point ER doctors questioned a few times when I went to the ER because they're like, you cannot be on a medication. You are a skinny, thin girl, and this is for like a 300-pound linebacker.
Wow. And that was from one prescriber was pushing on all three?
One prescriber was prescribing all of them.
Was that someone you saw in talk therapy, or was that just someone you went to and they
it was a full-fledged psychiatrist that I saw monthly.
Okay. In a way, that's better. I mean, that was he or she should have never put you on that much medication. But what we found, and your parents that you guys are dealing with now, is really it's hard to find someone who does both talk therapy and prescribes. So a lot of times the prescriber sees you very little, if at all, and that's the craziest system of all, that you just getting this person to just dole out the meds.
So she wasn't. It was crazy. I had the therapist for talk therapy, I had the psychologist for talk therapy, and I had the psychiatrist for talk therapy, all at the same time, none of them talking to each other.
That's what happens. And and then they'll sort of like play off each other or blame each other. And it was crazy. So we were pretty, we worked really hard to find somebody that would be both the prescriber and talk to them so that they were more in tune with what was going on a daily basis. But even then, it just seemed like, the second we had feedback, like, oh, this might not be working. Oh, we'll take that one off. Let's try another, we'll try this other one. We'll try this other one. Try this other one. And it just, little by little, he was on, I never thought he'd be on one, and then he was on three. And, it really did take a toll on his body. And now he's a kid, I can't get to take an aspirin. He won't take anything. I mean, I worry if he needed an antibiotic, he might refuse it. He's just so, opposed to anything in his body. And let's face it, there are going to be some medicines you have to take in life.
I was the bad person when I had her, and they were like, you need XYZ. And I'm like, no, I do not.
Yeah, because you're so jaded after that experience. Why not? I mean, what? They could blame you. I mean, it's terrible.
A lot of the parents, they're looking for guidance. They're looking for someone who's been there, because a lot of the guests on the podcast right now, and I noticed this as I was getting the question,
If you're looking for guidance, why go to the person who probably indubitably doesn't have children? Because if they did have children, teaching would be their job, and only a few amount of teachers actually have
So
children.
they,
So
they
why go to the person that probably like half what does, half what doesn't? Probably 50 versus 1% does.
You're right.
well,
I
they're
mean,
also the podcasts out there are from parents who are currently in the trenches
mm,
and haven't seen the end of the tunnel with their child becoming an adult. And Ryan has become an amazing young man.
thank you. No, it's true. And part of our worry, I think, when writing the book was that, it's not a guide. Like, you can't just take your kids skiing or rock climbing and everything's going to be okay. But, I think finding something that they're passionate about and like and love, gives you, like with anything with your kids, it gives you a little bit of leverage, that motivates them to want to do that thing. And it can be used as a reward, and not in the ABA sense, but in the, I didn't like when we would threaten Ryan with, "Oh, you're not going to go skiing this weekend if you keep this up," because it was the one thing he loved, and he was so much happier when he did it, and everybody was happier when he did it. So why would we take it away from him in a punishment? But I think for parents that read our book or know the story, it just should give you hope. This was a kid who was at the bottom of the barrel, was in a mental hospital, we were told to, put him in a residential facility and to just kind of lock him up and give up. And now if he's the most well-adjusted 24-year-old you ever saw. I mean, he's happy and healthy, and he's got a girlfriend, and he lives in a van, and he drives around and does all these things he loves to do. And he's been lucky. I mean, he's got a lot of parental support, and he hasn't had to, if he was working in a factory somewhere, he'd probably be pretty miserable, but he hasn't had to face that. So I think for parents, there is light at the end of the tunnel. There is hope. I mean, it's going to feel bleaker, I think, or bleakest when they're young, because all of the little things just you magnify, and you think, if she doesn't learn to potty train, she'll never, be able to live on her own. If she doesn't learn to, make better food choices or something, some silly thing, you just extrapolate the bigger part, but little by little, those little things will get done. And, the big things really come down to, can they be happy in their life in some capacity? Is there something that gives them joy? And if they have that, then there's reason for hope all over. And it's no school should take that from any kid, I think. And that's part of what my warning is about the ABA and about medicine, I think, is to strip them of that joy.
And I think that's the thing that a lot of the parents are looking for. And I will admit, I've looked at a lot of the podcasts, and they are done by people who are currently in, or that they're therapists. There is hope. Your child is going to grow up and hopefully become as amazing as Ryan's become.
Thank you so much. And I think we don't know what the world's going to look like in 20 years. I mean, I think a lot of, what school is training them for are careers that won't exist. I think AI is going to replace a lot of these. I mean, we may live in a world where people have a lot of leisure time and free time and opportunity to be creative, and the world might look a lot different. And so I wouldn't get hung up on, is he going to be a doctor, lawyer, or stockbroker? And I was hung up on that for a long time. I couldn't imagine, like, how's he going to earn a living? What's he going to do? And then, when we found skiing and rock climbing, and we started meeting these ski guides and people who they spend their lives traveling the world, and they teach people, and they take people up to cool places. They don't make a ton of money, so what? I mean, they're happy. And so, just focus on that happiness. I parent my daughter a lot differently because of Ryan, because when I got to the point with Ryan where I just wanted him to be happy for 5 minutes, and I forgot about everything else. And that doesn't mean you spoil them, but it means that should always have been the goal. And I think I got so hung up when he was the first kid that, that he'd be better than me and be more successful. And you get hung up in the sort of pedigree of schools and careers. None of it matters if they're unhappy.
You mentioned AI taking over. I think a lot of these parents don't know it is going to take over a lot of jobs. Not the legal field currently, because I know a bunch of my friends are laughing over a few of those
I know.
AI briefs that have been
Well,
filed.
I know, yeah, they're not there yet, but they might get there.
But I think a lot of, like you said, the schools are teaching for jobs that aren't necessarily going to be there. We've taken a lot of the arts out, a lot of the creatives out. And a lot of these kids, they need that creative expression. The typical kids probably do too, but
Definitely. And I think, and embracing the technology, I think there's a lot of careers that will revolve around, you know, being on a video screen and being on a screen. I think that's okay. You know, I think it doesn't mean that you want them all to be influencers because they'll all be on TikTok dancing away, but
I know my
take making a
husband's
living.
my husband's military, and a lot of even the steering of ships, of subs and everything, you need to know how to use a game controller because that's how we're doing it. It's
Yeah,
hardwired in.
that's interesting. Well, I imagine that. Well, it's true. Right? And I think that probably that's how they train, right? So that's,
It's
you know, I think it's okay to let them, you know, the fear of them playing too many video games or playing, you know, yeah, there's probably a limit, or it depends on the games if they're violent or whatnot. I didn't have to face that. Ryan wasn't really that interested in it, and we're a little older, but I never understood Minecraft. I didn't know what he was doing. He played for hours on end, but he was building things and building worlds, and I was like, oh, how bad could that be? But you know, I think that there's probably some unique, weird career out there that we don't even know about that your kid will find some joy in it and happiness in it, and maybe make a living at it, which will be something that's great for everybody.
a bunch of people just wrote a script for a Minecraft movie, so
Right? That did well. It did well in the box office. I
it
can't
did better than I
imagine
thought it was going to.
before we go see it, but I guess there's enough kids out there that are interested in it. Yeah, that was mystifying for me. I just remember the first time we were in Mammoth skiing and Ryan was playing Minecraft, and he said something like, "Somebody's in my world and they blew up my building," or something. And I was like looking around the room, like where, like how is that possible? Like how do they know where you are? Like it just was terrifying. You know, I didn't know what was going on, so it's hard to
Yeah.
be the old guy.
You've mentioned a few times the skiing stuff with Ryan, and I'm sure you have plenty of stories, but is there any way we could get you to tell a couple of them to the audience?
Yeah, no, it's like Ryan was, you know, so much better than me from the start, and yeah, we got to the point where, you know, I had to always face, you know, what if we separate and we get lost? I have to stay with him, but if I go with him, I might die. So I had to always make those decisions. So I plummeted down one run at Mammoth backwards, head first, and I remember plunging toward these cliffs and thinking, "This is it. This is the end." And then somehow I got out of that, and you know, he came down. And he was really concerned for me, and it was the first time I had seen that he was, you know, really empathetic, and of course he, you know, I got back up and he just had the GoPro on, and I said, "We're not going to put this one on YouTube, are we?" And he got all upset because of course we were. Like, you know, I did the wrong, Dad. You know, just because you fell and made a fool of yourself, like, well, I looked cool. So we had a lot of that. We had one time we were in Snowbird and Alta are in Utah, and they connect. They're different resorts, but you can ski to one and the other. And but they connect at the top where it's easy. The first time we went there, we were in Alta, and he was convinced we could get to Snowbird through like the middle, and he's like 9, and I listened to him, and we ended up on this road, and we're skis and we're shouldering, and we're walking, and I'm sweating, and the guy drives up, and we ask him how to get to Snowbird, and he doesn't say anything. He just looks at me. He says, "Is there any chance you have heart problems in your family?" And I said, "What?" And he said, "You don't look good." So, well, you know, I was sweating. I was at altitude. I was all red. And he said, "You should get some water. Take it easy." So we had some disasters like that, but and if you listen to him tell the story, it was all my fault. I got us lost. I made us get on the road. But we were new at it. It was a new sport. I was bad at it, and it was, and I'm like the classic dad who won't ask for directions. I never learned the names of trails. I never learned the names of lifts. I never knew where we were going. And then somehow I learned that I should just listen to him and follow him. So we had some adventures along the way. We went to some really cool places. We ended up in Antarctica a couple of times, which is just a really unique, amazing experience. And we've been to South America, Argentina, Japan. I mean, it's you know, my appreciation for travel in the world is all because of skiing. And you know, we've learned a lot. And I used to, you know, back in the day when we'd go anywhere and worry that if his cheeseburger came with a tomato on it, like the world would end, right? You know, that would be it. Like the meal was ruined. and to that, to being shipped heading to Antarctica, it's little by little he tolerated more of life, and we got to explore more of the world.
I don't know if you guys found this with Ryan, but we found it with Leta. If we didn't pressure her into trying stuff, she was more likely to try it.
Definitely. I know. Once they think you want them to do it, like he never would do it. And everything's like, I remember he had a thing about creamy, like he didn't like ice cream. He didn't like, like cream cheese when he was a kid, and like soups and yogurts used to disgust him. But I remember thinking, like, you're gonna like this. I wanted to jam it in his mouth. Like, who doesn't like ice cream? And but now he eats it like crazy. But I remember like fighting him because he wouldn't try it. But you're right. If I push too hard,
I know when you guys were last on the program, we mentioned that Leta has some trauma surrounding pizza and being forced to eat pizza from her therapist until she threw up. And she's 13. I don't think she's ever eating pizza.
That's so funny. Ryan, I think we told the story, but it was in food group, and the first ABA school he was at, and food group was him being forced to try things that disgusted him. And I mean, why would you do that? And so, and he was like that too. Like he would eventually throw up. I mean, that was his defense, I think. So, and he got to the point where he thought about he could make himself throw up, and so. That's terrible. God, I'm so sorry. Does she still not eat it? Or was she?
She still won't eat it. And people still to this day are like, no, you need to try it. And she's like,
Yeah.
I am not going to try this at all. I've already told you I will not eat it. And I'm like, let's not force the child to eat the thing. She said,
No, God.
I don't care if this is America.
You don't have to eat
Dancing
it.
over yourselves.
Yeah, you're right. You don't have to eat it.
that trauma I don't know that it's going to go away.
No. It really.
Also, if any Italians want to come at me, just blame the people who forced me to eat it.
I'm right with you. I've stopped eating it too. Because learned that I do better without it. But I am Italian, and the people look at me crazy when I don't eat it. I think you're ahead of the curve. You're going to be on the keto diet. You'll be eating all lean meats and vegetables.
Still does a lot. She's grown up in the Southwest. There's still a lot of tortillas and chilies in her diet.
I can't help that. No, that's good food there for sure. I don't blame you.
Because I have a soy allergy, they're all homemade tortillas, so I know what ingredients are going in it.
I mean, if you're in New Mexico, you don't get looks for not eating pizza because barely anyone eats pizza in New Mexico because New Mexico is right near Mexico.
It's true.
Grew up on the border, and there were pizza joints, but they didn't last as long because it wasn't what everyone eats.
I mean, they really just lasted like a month.
Now
and she has moved her camera so that all you get to see is her cute little kitty Staffy.
He or she is a little chubby. I'm not gonna lie to you.
He's a little chubby.
He's stupid. I love him. He's stupid. He has no brains. He has food for brains. Well, that only one brain cell because I have seen him run into a wall multiple times.
He's loyal.
Well, that or it could be the depth perception issue. He runs into walls.
We have a little of that with one of ours, but she's pretty old. Where did you rescue from? A rescue down there or far away?
He was rescued from Alabama. He kind of chose us. His owners, he and the other one we have right now are both COVID puppies. They're the youngest dogs we have ever rescued. They were both adopted as puppies, and his owners had never had a dog before, so they adopted a Pitty Staffy mix puppy as their first dog.
Oh, God. During COVID. Oh, my God.
Not the smartest thing. And they had a dog door for him, and he just kind of roamed the neighborhood to the point we thought he was a stray.
Yeah. That's so funny.
And they went out of town for a weekend over Thanksgiving. Their dog sitter forgot to tell him, he didn't come back home, and he just spent Thanksgiving with us, and he went back to his family and then kept breaking out to come to our house.
Blame him? It was a little structure at this place, and
he was less chubby then.
I bet. Yeah. Well, he's roaming the neighborhood, probably eating God knows what.
And he's got a few scars that were definitely
Oh,
from other dogs.
yeah, there had to be all kinds of other strays fighting it. He looks very happy and content right now. So what's he looking out at? The neighborhood?
He is looking out at the squirrels to see. The other one is a beagle lab mix, which I do not highly suggest getting.
She's fast. She's escaped the house before, and like, yeah,
That's
that
quite.
was she's
Yeah.
jumped off the 2-story balcony and only got a light and took off some of the first scratch.
Wow.
She's alive.
Tough. That's a tough
You
dog.
take a working line hunting beagle and put it in the body of a working line hunting lab, and you have nothing short of a hunting dog.
And a moose.
Yeah. Wow. That's quite a mix. I don't
But
know how that would work. Pretty awesome.
it is not an easy dog. I don't highly
It's-
suggest it unless
it's
you're
not.
used to dealing with crazy dogs.
She would take on
Yeah.
a polar bear.
That's a lot. Do you guys have a lot of land? Do you have what room of your own and stuff?
No, we're pretty much. So Colorado Springs has a lot of green space. So like the deer have come to our neighbor's backyard and just eaten their trees because the green space runs about 2 blocks from our house.
Did
But
she go spy mode?
the Beagle Lab mix has started a war with the squirrels.
No. Yeah, my dogs hate the squirrels.
Again,
So he is
it's
intently
But-
looking at the squirrels,
Yeah.
making sure they do not get into their territory.
Yeah, amazing. I mean, my dogs come close, but the squirrels always they always have that last little lunge. My dogs are little, they're miniatures now. But they're bred to root out rats. That was what they were bred for. So they hate squirrels. And but they never catch them. The squirrels are smarter than you'd think, I think.
I want to thank you for coming back on, Rob.
Yeah,
I
I'm not
really
joking.
appreciate you coming on. I could talk to you for hours still.
Yeah, I mean, it's always fun to talk to you guys. And definitely, and you can have Ryan's a little harder to schedule, but if you ever want to have him back on, he's fun. To talk to.
I understand. He is a young man who is always on the go, and it
Yeah.
is getting to his busy season with all the rock climbing.
Yeah, he's excited. He had a great season, ski season wise, and he's been, gearing up now for rock climbing. The transition over is definitely happened. There's not much skiing left, but he loves Acadia. If you ever travel, Acadia, Maine is a cool national park. It's right on the ocean, very beautiful, and just kind of a chill town. It's very easygoing for New England standards, and he loves it up there. It's a good place for him. I think it's a very nurturing environment and a fun environment. A lot of young people who are kind of doing what he's doing.
And a lot closer to home for you guys than if you were to come out here to the Rockies to go rock climbing.
Yeah, I always thought we'd lose him to the West eventually. He did his rock guide course right near you guys, I think. I forget where exactly, but I think it was pretty close to where you are. I think that's where and he said the rock there was really difficult and hard. I remember him saying that there's another course he debated taking, and he was a little afraid to take it there. He's going to take it out in Vegas, and that's a little that Red Rock area out there a little easier. So it's no joke where you guys are skiing and rock climbing. There's a lot of consequence.
Oh yeah, and at least hopefully next year we'll have skiing season again. This year it was a bad snow year.
Well, it's funny. Yeah, I guess Montana where we go, that was pretty good. Utah, I think, was okay, pretty good. Utah got some late snow, but I didn't hear much about Colorado, so it wasn't that great either.
It was so dry. We're down in Colorado Springs, so we see Pikes Peak all the time. You could see the Pikes Peak granite on the peak almost all winter long. There
All
was
winter.
no snow-capped Pikes Peak.
That's a bad year, but it's cyclical. You guys will get hammered next year maybe, but yeah, for sure. If he's ever out there, I'll have him look you up because I know he drives through there a lot. He's been a couple times.
Well, thanks for coming back on the program.
right.
We're going to
Great
keep in
to see you
touch
guys.
because
No,
we
please do.
appreciate it so much.
It's always fun. Yeah, no, it's always fun to talk to you. Well, you guys stay well. Have a good summer if I don't talk to you beforehand.
All right.
Give me
Bye.
people.
All
Yeah,
right.
Jimmy Kimmel. Thanks so much.
My manager schnauzers will be lunch for that people. So I think we have little city dogs.
Yeah. Have
All
a
right.
great one.
All right. Bye, guys. Bye, Leta.
Okay, well, thank you for watching the podcast, and please subscribe, and also look at that adorable paper. So if you want to subscribe for it, and also please leave a like. And don't forget, if you subscribe to our stuff, you won't miss any of our new podcast stuffies. And also, did you see that adorable paper? Don't you like it?